Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pondering Skulls podcast. My name is Bree.
My name is Tiff.
And yes, you heard that right. Her name is Tiff. Mo is not feeling well tonight, so she's not going to be part of this. I'm not going to put her through the torment of having to read while trying not to cough. But Tiff is going to be taking over for her on this one, and she's going to read a story for us. But, I've got one to start out with. We're, of course, back on Reddit. So I hope you enjoy.
Enjoy!
This first story comes from r/stay awake, and it was posted by Information Remote 865. It's called I Went Cave Exploring with Some Friends. I'm the only one that survived. I used to think Mammoth Cave was just another adventure, a tick off of our list. It was supposed to be fun, a weekend to explore the shadows with my best friends, to test our nerves in the endless dark. But somewhere down there, under miles of stone, something went wrong. Now one of us is missing, and I swear I can still hear him calling. We've been going for hours, our voices echoing through the tunnels, each one mocking the confidence we had when we'd started. There was me, Sam, and my friends Luke, Jared, and Ben. Ben was always the daring one, the first to wander ahead, the one who'd get us into trouble just to laugh it off. But when he didn't come back, no one was laughing. It's strange. We retraced our steps, searched every crevice, calling his name until our voices scraped raw. Nothing. Just an endless silence, heavy and swallowing, and then the faintest echo, like Ben's voice drifting from somewhere deep in the shadows. Luke was the first to hear him calling. He stopped dead, his head shooting up as we walked, telling us to listen. We froze, straining against the thick silence. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his voice barely louder than a breath. None of us had, but as we stood there, letting the silence settle around us, we heard it. A faint, distant call, almost swallowed by the stone around us. It was Ben's voice, unmistakably. He was calling out, the sound barely reaching us but bouncing off the cave walls in strange, warped echoes. The direction was wrong, though. The call wasn't coming from where we'd last seen him. It was coming from one of the tunnels we hadn't even traveled down. But maybe, somehow, the paths were connected. It wasn't impossible for cave tunnels to intersect. We were probably about 2 miles down at this point, so deep that the silence felt alive, closing in around us. The chill in the air seeped into our bones, and every breath echoed back like a reminder of how far we'd come. The walls felt tighter here, the space around us shrieking with each step. Our lights cast shaky beams on the rough stone, cutting through just enough darkness to keep us moving. We'd packed extra batteries, sure, but even with the supplies, it's uneasy feeling twisted in my gut. Still leaving wasn't an option. Ben was down there somewhere, and we couldn't just abandon him in the dark. We walked about a few hundred feet, calling out Ben's name into the dark, waiting in silence, hoping for any kind of response. The cave swallowed our voices, leaving only the faint drip of water somewhere far off. Then, after what felt like ages, we heard him. It came from behind us. "What the fuck?" Luke whispered, his voice tight and shaky. Eyes darted back and toward the path we'd just covered. Jared, louder than any of us, shouted back, "All right, Ben, you can stop messing with us now, man. This isn't funny, bro." I wanted to believe it, that Ben was just messing with us, hiding in the shadowed nook and waiting to jump out. But as I stared into the empty tunnels behind us, a chill crept over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that somehow it wasn't really Ben. We backtracked, our lights slicing through the shadows as we searched every inch of the area. We moved slowly, scouring every nook, every crack in the walls, but there wasn't a single trace of Ben. Not a footprint, not even a scuff mark. He was just gone. Eventually we returned to the central cavern, slumping down on the cold stone to catch our breath and regroup. I told the others what had been gnawing at me, the dread curling around my thoughts, but Luke was quick to brush it off. "Oh, come on, man, you know Ben is just fucking with us," he said, his tone forced, like he's trying to convince himself as much as me. "Well, how did he end up back there then, when he was down there before?" I shot back. I'm telling you guys, something isn't right. Before anyone could answer, Ben's voice echoed again, faint but unmistakable. This time, it come from the tunnel we'd seen him go down first. Come on, guys. This way. His voice drifted down the rocky corridors, a lazy drawl that somehow felt wrong. Jared sprang to his feet, shouting down the tunnel, "Screw you, Ben! When I see you, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you!" Then we heard it. A low, chuckling laugh, the sound echoing, but from a completely different tunnel. Luke and Jared explained glances, the bravado draining from their faces. It was like the air had thickened, and now they felt it too. Something was off. A chill crept over all of us, settling in our bones as Ben's laughter faded into the shadows. We huddled together, whispering hurriedly about what to do. The idea of living came up quick, but Luke shot it down fast. "We can't just leave Ben down here, guys," he insisted, voice firm but edged with unease. Jared shook his head, glancing toward the distant exit. "I'm going. I'll call the cops and tell them my friend's missing. I'll come back with a search party." It wasn't a bad idea, honestly. Part of me felt relief at the thought of professionals with equipment and experience. But Luke wouldn't budge, his jaw set, determination in his eyes. He wanted to keep looking and convinced that Ben was close, just around the corner. Jared didn't wait for more argument. With a last look back, he took off down the path toward the exit, his flashlight bouncing along the walls until he was out of sight. Luke and I stood there in silence, the weight of the decision hanging heavy between us. Eventually, we decided to search a little longer. Just a little longer, we told ourselves. After Jared disappeared from sight, Luke and I ventured down the same tunnel Ben had vanished into. We called out, voices barely steady, and after a moment, Ben's voice drifted back, faint and distorted, like it was caught in a slow echo. The sound seeped out of a dark, narrow crevice ahead, just wide enough for us to squeeze through. We moved cautiously, each step slower than the last, feeling a prickling sensation on our necks, like unseen eyes were watching us from the shadows. The path bent sharply to the right, creating the illusion that it might loop back toward the other end of the tunnels. Luke forced a chuckle. "See? He's just messing with us." But as we rounded the corner, our light caught on something that made us stop dead. A jagged hole yawned open in the middle of the path, wide and deep, cutting off the tunnel. The space was too narrow to walk side by side, so I trailed behind as Luke edged forward and aimed his flashlight down into the darkness below. Luke went silent, his light fixed on something I couldn't see. I waited, the quiet pressing in until the tension grew unbearable. "What is it?" I whispered, trying to peer around him. When he turned toward me, his face was drained of color, eyes wide, lips parted like he couldn't quite find the words. He swallowed, barely managing to get it out. "He's down there," Luke said, his voice trembling. My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" I stammered, heart pounding against my ribs. "He's down there, Sam," Luke whispered, voice cracking. "Dead." The words hit me like a punch. I stood there, numb with disbelief, until Luke grabbed my arm, his grip almost painful. "We have to get out of here," his voice tight with terror. Without words, we turned and started back, moving fast but steady, our lights casting frantic beams along the rough stone walls. As we reached the tunnel that led back to the central cavern, another voice echoed through the darkness. "Guys?" Neither of us paused. We broke into a sprint, feet pounding against the ground, breaths ragged with panic. We didn't care where it was coming from, we just wanted out. In his haste, Luke stumbled over a jagged rock and fell hard, his flashlight skidding across the ground before shattering into pieces. I stopped, reaching down to pull him up, my light sweeping the walls as I moved, and that's when I saw it. A figure, pale and naked, crouched at the far end of the tunnel, watching us with hollow, empty eyes. It looked almost human, but something was horribly, horribly wrong. "Oh my God." I muttered, my voice barely a whisper, trembling as I stared at the figure. Luke turned, catching sight of it, his face twisting in terror. He grabbed my arm, jolting me out of my daze. "Come on, Sam," he urged, pulling me forward. We didn't look back, rushing through the darkness, desperate to put as much distance between us and whatever that thing was. Every shadow felt like it was closing in on us, every echo stretching our nerves tighter. As we reached the main tunnel that led out of the cave, we saw a figure lying on the ground ahead. Jared. He was sprawled face down, motionless, his flashlight lying a few feet away, casting an eerie glow on the stone. "Oh God." I breathed, my heart racing as we knelt beside him. He must have tripped, maybe knocked himself out in a rush to get out. But when we turned him over, the breath left my lungs. His face was unrecognizable, crushed and bloody, as if something had beaten him down over and over. The horror of it froze us in place, and I could barely think, only feel the cold grip of fear sinking deeper into my bones. That's when we heard it. A voice drifting from the shadows, but this time, it wasn't Ben's. It was Jared's. "Come on, guys. This way." The voice called out, soft and taunting. I swung my flashlight toward the sound, heart hammering, and there it was, standing just beyond the light's reach. Pale, humanoid, but wrong in every way. Its skin was chalky, almost luminescent under the beam, and its eyes, solid, black, empty, and endless. The thing stared at us for a moment, then turned, its movements jerky and unnatural, and ran down the tunnel, laughing in Jared's voice, a sick, twisted echo of the friend we'd known. "What the hell?" Luke whispered, voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. He grabbed my arm, his grip trembling. "We have to get out of here, man." I didn't need any convincing. We bolted, feet slamming against the stone, the darkness stretching ahead of us like a maw, ready to swallow us whole. As we ran, the creature's footsteps echoed closely behind us, its pace relentless. My heart pounded, my breaths coming in ragged gasps as we pushed forward. Suddenly, Luke stumbled and fell, hitting the ground hard. I skidded to a stop, spinning around, and that's when I saw it. The creature had caught up to him, gripping his leg and starting to drag him back into the shadows. Luke clawed at the ground, his face contorted in terror. Without thinking, I shone my flashlight directly on it, and as the beam hit, the creature shrank back, raising its long, bony arms to shield its huge black eyes. It couldn't stand the light, that much was clear. I stepped toward Luke, the light fixed on the creature as it hissed and retreated, slipping back into the pitch-black depths of the cave. We backed away slowly, both of us trembling, the silence around us settling like a heavy weight. We kept moving, trying to keep our steps steady, though every nerve in our bodies screamed to run. Luke fumbled in his bag, pulling out his spare flashlight, and now with both beams cutting through the shadows, we scanned every crevice, every dark corner around us. The creature was silent now, but its presence clung to us, a feeling so thick it was hard to breathe. We both knew it was still there, lurking in the out of sight, watching and waiting. Minutes stretched on, each one more suffocating than the last. But then, just as panic threatened to take over, we saw it. The cave entrance. A sliver of remaining daylight spilling in, piercing through the darkness of like a lifeline. It was so close, a beacon of hope after the nightmare that had so nearly swallowed us whole. We made it, or at least we thought we did. Step by step, we edged closer to the exit, the sunlight drawing us in so we could almost feel its warmth. But just as the final stretch, the creature dropped down from above, a blur of pale skin and black eyes, crashing into Luke, sending him sprawling to the ground. I whipped around, frantically aiming my light, but it was too late. In an instant, the creature pinned him down, smashing his head against the stone with brutal force. Paralyzed for a split second, my mind screamed at me to act, to do something, but instinct took over. I turned and ran, abandoning Luke's final muffled cries, leaving my friend behind. Tears streamed down my face, blurring my vision as I pushed forward, barely seeing the light ahead. When I finally bust out of the cave into the fading daylight, I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air, chest heaving, and the weight of loss crashing over me. The tears came hard, unstoppable, as I lay there shattered, knowing I was the only one who made it out. As I forced myself to stand, steadying my breath, I heard it. Luke's voice, faint and choked with fear, calling out from the depths of the cave. "Sam, please, help me." I froze, every instinct screaming at me to ignore it, to remember what I'd seen, to remember that Luke was gone, but hearing his voice, broken and desperate, twisted my insides. The guilt clawed at me sharper than any fear. I had left him. I had abandoned him. The pleading continued, soft but relentless, each word pulling at the frayed edges of my sanity. Some part of me wanted to run back, to run into the dark, convinced he was waiting, that I could still save him. But another part, a colder, darker part, knew the truth. It wasn't Luke. It was the creature, mimicking his voice, sinking its claws into the last threads of hope I had left. And yet, what if, somehow, it really was him? The thought tore at me, leaving me stranded there, helpless and shattered, unable to move forward or look back. Finally, I forced myself to turn away from the cave, each step heavier than the last. I had to leave. I had to get out of there and tell someone what had happened, no matter how impossible it seemed. But as I reached the edge of the forest, the realization settled in. I couldn't tell them the truth. They'd never believe me. No one would. I could already picture the looks of doubt, the whispers, the judgment. So I rehearsed the lie as I stumbled into town, every word twisting in my throat. I told them we were stalked by someone in the cave, that he'd ambushed us, attacked Jared and Luke. I described a faceless killer lurking in the dark, hunting us down one by one. It was easier that way, easier than trying to explain the unexplainable. They listened, and they wrote it all down, but even as I spoke, a chill ran through me. In the back of my mind, Luke's voice still echoed, pleading, calling me back into the dark. The cops didn't let it go. They pressed me for hours, asking the same questions over and over, watching my every reaction. Soon enough, they began talking to my friends and family, probing into my relationship with the group. I could see it in their eyes. They suspected me. I was the last one out, the only one who made it back. My story didn't add up. They searched the cave for days, combing through every passage, every cavern. Eventually, they found Ben's body crumpled at the bottom of that pit, limbs twisted at unnatural angles. But Luke and Jared, they were gone. Their remains were never recovered. And now when I close my eyes, I still see the darkness of that cave, hear the echo of their voices, distant and pleading. No one believes me, and maybe, after all of this, I'm not sure I even believe myself. The only thing I know for certain is that I'll never step one foot in another cave for as long as I live. The thought alone makes my skin crawl, my heart race. The darkness isn't just unsettling to me now. It's a living, breathing terror, wrapping itself around every corner, every shadow. I'm afraid of the dark in ways I never imagined, paranoia gnawing at every time I turn off the light. Even here, in my own home, I can feel it, the creature's gaze, lurking just beyond the glow of my lamp, hidden in the pockets of darkness, patient and unyielding. It's waiting for me. I can feel it, lurking, watching, waiting for that one moment when I'm left alone in the dark. And I know, deep down, that it won't stop until it pulls me back into the shadows, just like it did with them. Okay, so Tiff was supposed to read this one, but I don't think y'all want to hear monotone, robot sounding. But anyways, this was posted to r/creepypasta. It was posted by JDub81191. And it's called Something Grabbed My Leg When I Ran Up the Stairs. I can't be the only one. Ever since I was a kid, I would run up the basement stairs because I was scared someone was going to grab my leg. I would be in a full-on sprint, all while trying to hit the light switch on the way up. There was always this constant feeling that something lurked behind me as I was coming back up the stairs. In my childhood home, the game room was in the basement. You know what kind of basement I'm talking about. TV down there, Xbox, board games, computer, pool table. Maybe it was me just being a dumb kid, but I continued to do it for years. It became a habit for me. Go downstairs, hang out, play games, watch TV. The end of the night would come and my Olympic training would start. Turn off the TV, swipe for the light as I sprint up the stairs, and then shut the door. Obviously, nothing ever grabbed me. It was just that fear of what was lurking in the dark behind me that gave me goosebumps. I would love to tell you guys as I got older, I stopped doing it, but I didn't. I was a chicken, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I slept with a nightlight until I was 13. I never left a closet door open when I went to sleep. And even as an adult, I always check the back seat of my car when I get in. My parents are retiring to Florida, and instead of selling the house right away, they decided to ask me if I had any interest in moving back in. The house is paid off, so I would just cover the utilities. I got a pretty good job right out of college and can afford it, so I figured I would keep the memories alive and move in. The only downside to moving in is that I would be living alone. I did have family close by, which was a plus, but living by myself would be so strange. I lived with my parents until college, and during my college years, I always had a roommate, whether I lived in a dorm or an off-campus apartment. The night before my parents were moving out, we had a little going-away party for them. A ton of food and lots of drinks were had. My older sister lived a few blocks away, so the entire family was there. It was a fun yet emotional night. I know my parents weren't leaving forever, and I would see them, but it would still feel like a piece of me was being taken on their retirement adventures. During the get-together, I pulled my mom to the side and asked if there was anything I should be concerned about when taking on the house. Any leaks, damage, problems, or creepy spirits I should be worried about. I may have presented that last part as a joke, but like I said, I was a chicken, and was just slightly concerned about how I'd handle living alone. My mom assured me that there was no problems with the house, and that once I got used to the normal house maintenance, it would be smooth sailing. Jason, you have to keep the house clean. You no longer have the luxury of an unpaid maid. We just remodeled the kitchen not too long ago, so all the appliances are new. My biggest worry with you is your laundry. Really, Ma? My laundry? Yes, Jason. You would always let all your dirty clothes pile up, and when you would come to visit me, I would have to haul all your bags down to the basement and spend what felt like days washing and drying them. I thought you loved doing that, Madre. That's why I would always save it for you, I said with a big smile on my face. My mom nudged me on the arm and walked away sighing and laughing. I hadn't even thought about it. Not only would I have to be in the house alone, not only would I have to do laundry, but I would have to go to the basement alone. I leaned back against the wall and thought to myself, what the hell am I so worried about? I am a grown-ass man. This is the stupidest thing to be concerned about. A basement? That's my biggest concern, being scared of the dark as I run up the stairs. The thought alone made me laugh. It was ridiculous, but I needed to grow up. The basement hadn't gotten much use as I got older. I started to go out more and hang out with friends and was barely even home. Then once I went to college, my visits home consisted of eating homemade food, seeing family, and going out drinking with friends. The pep talk to myself ended when I heard what sounded like a stampede coming up the basement steps. For a split second, I thought it was in my head until my nephew busted through the door, breathing heavy and in near tears as he ran straight to his mother. Joey, are you okay? What happened? My sister asked. Still catching his breath, Joey answered, Mom, there's something downstairs. What are you talking about? Why were you in the basement? I interrupted, What did you see downstairs? I didn't see anything. I was coming up the stairs and someone tried to grab my leg. My sister's husband told his son to calm down and gave him a hug. He told him He would go in the basement and check. While everyone else in the house may think he was just a scared kid whose imagination got the best of him, for some reason I believed him. I can't tell you what it was, but I knew he had the same feelings I had every time I came up those stairs. He felt like something was behind him. I would be lying if I told you I wasn't terrified. I never told anyone about the little routine I had when coming up the stairs from the basement, so nobody else seemed to be concerned. My sister was calming my nephew down as my brother-in-law made his way to the basement. I stood at the top of the stairs and looked down. I watched as he passed by the staircase several times looking for someone, something, anything. He found nothing. He made his way back upstairs and he assured my nephew there was nothing down there and nothing to worry about. The night ended shortly after that. I said goodbye to my family and went over to hug my nephew. Uncle Jason. What's up, pal? There is something down there. Be careful. He gave me a hug that lasted a bit longer than normal and headed toward the door. I was happy to have my parents stay at the house at least one more night before heading to Florida. After driving them to the airport, I returned back to the house. I walked in the front door and took a deep breath. This is it, I said to myself. I was on my own in the house now. I turned the lights on in the kitchen and living room even though the sun was shining through the windows. It just gave me a little extra comfort knowing that the light was on. It was a safety blanket for me. I began to clean up from last night, and before I knew it, hours had passed. I got a phone call from my sister. Jay, do you want to come over for dinner? Tonight? Sure, I don't have any plans. Sorry about Joey last night. He was still a little shaken up, even when we got home. No need to apologize. I just feel bad he was so scared. He practically begged me to invite you over tonight, so I told him I would. I think he feels a little silly about what happened. I gotcha. No worries. 7 o'clock good? Yeah, sounds like a plan. See you there. I rang the doorbell, and almost instantly the door swung open. It was Joey. He ran onto the porch and hugged me. Uncle Jason, you're okay. Yeah, buddy, I'm okay. Are you? I said with a not-so-subtle fake laugh. My sister came to the door and grabbed my jacket. She hung it up and made her way towards the kitchen. Dinner will be ready in 5 minutes. Jack should be getting home from Jenny's soccer practice in a few. I took a seat at the dining room table and I could feel Joey staring at me. Why was he so concerned? It struck me as odd, but it scared me more than anything else. What the hell did he see in that basement? What did he feel? Jack went to check. No one was down there. In all the years I lived at that house, there were no problems. Even though I ran up those stairs almost every night, nothing ever happened. I chalked it up to just being a scared kid. Uncle Jason, did you go in the basement last night when I left? No, I did not. After seeing you run up those stairs, I wasn't risking it. I smiled at him nervously. You know, I'm not scared of anything. I was just seeing what old games you had down there. I had the lights on. While I was sitting looking at the shelves, someone turned out the lights. I don't think anyone was close to the basement, buddy. I heard someone breathing. What? Someone was breathing down there with me. That's when I ran up to the stairs. I felt something touch my leg when I opened the door. My sister walked into the dining room with a big tray of pasta. Food's ready! Jack walked in with Jenny and the kids went to go wash their hands. If no one could tell, I was scared before they could see it on my face now. Sorry, I messed up. My sister asked me what's wrong, and I told her I was just starving. I ate tons of food and tried to clear my mind of what Joey told me. I asked my sister if she had any wine. I purposely drank a bit too much, which caused my sister to tell me to just spend the night on the couch so I didn't drive home. I took her up on that offer and crashed on the couch. I didn't sleep much. It was Sunday now. I didn't want to be a burden to my sister and her family anymore, so I said goodbye and headed home. I had work tomorrow and had absolutely no clothes to wear. I had to do some laundry. In that basement. I got home and gathered my clothes. I headed for the basement, making sure to hit every light switch on the way. I swung open the basement door and made sure to keep it open. I walked down the steps with my giant load of laundry and then threw my clothes in the washing machine. I started it, and just as I went to turn around, I thought I heard a noise. Without hesitation, I headed for the stairs and sprinted up, skipping 4 with every lunge. I closed the basement door and realized that I had left my phone on the table. That sound I heard was my phone vibrating. I gotta relax. When my clothes were finished washing, I put them in the dryer. When all was said and done, the laundry I brought back upstairs without any incidents. For the next few weeks, I kept my visits to the basement at a minimum. I always had an uneasy feeling whenever I was down there. I always kept the lights on and never closed the door. Even though nothing had happened, I certainly wasn't going to take any chances. It had only been a short while my parents were in Florida, but they wanted to come back for the weekend so they could see the family. I, of course, told my parents that they could stay at the house. This was their house, after all. We decided it would be a fun idea to have a game night at the house. Game nights always consisted of food, lots of laughs, and always, I mean always, arguments. What can I say? We were a competitive family. I grabbed my parents from the airport in the morning, and by dinner time, the rest of the family was over. Joey didn't leave his parents' side from the moment he got there. He was constantly looking around and listening intently to whatever sounds he heard. We played Uno, Sorry, and Trouble, all the classics. There was one big one we hadn't played yet, Monopoly. The ultimate argument maker. I teased my sister about how I used to destroy her in Monopoly, and how she still owes me money from the time she landed on Park Place and quit. After some laughing, I realized Monopoly wasn't upstairs. It was in the basement. Once I relayed the message to everyone that I had to go get it, Joey ran over to me and told me not to go. "Please, Uncle Jason, stay up here. We don't have to play Monopoly." "Relax, buddy. It'll just take 2 seconds and I'll be right back." "No," he shouted. "Please stay here." Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked over to us. Joey was clinging to me. My sister came over to put him at ease. I told him I wouldn't go down and it was going to be all right. Without anyone noticing, my dad made his way toward the basement door. He just wanted everyone to keep having fun. He figured he could go down and grab the game and come back before anyone even realized. Well, we did realize. We realized because we heard the basement door slam and my dad tumble down the staircase. I sprinted over to the door and had to wrestle it open. It felt like someone was holding it from the other side. I finally threw it open and ran down the stairs. Monopoly money lined the basement floor. The game must have flew out of my dad's hand as he fell. He had a nasty bump on his forehead, but he insisted he was okay. I asked him what happened, and he said he didn't know. I grabbed the game and was making my way back upstairs. I just wanted everyone to keep having a good time. I got to the top of the stairs and the door slammed. I lost my balance and I went down. I'm fine, I swear. I helped my dad back up the stairs and sat him down at the table. My mother was worried and insisted he go to the hospital to get checked out. She didn't know if he was bleeding internally or maybe even suffered a concussion. I agreed with her and convinced my dad that he should go. As a family, we gathered our things and headed to the hospital. I figured I would need the next couple of days from work off to take care of my dad and make sure he was all right. It wasn't until we got to the hospital that I realized I left my phone back at home. I told my mom and sister that I needed to go back home and grab it. Joey overheard and pleaded to go with me. I looked at my sister and she shrugged. "Please, Uncle Jason, I just want to make sure you're safe." When we walked in the door, something seemed off. I let the lights on when we left, but now they were off. I thought maybe the power went out, but when I hit the switch, the lights came back on. I thought maybe my mom hit them on the way out. I went to grab my phone from the counter when I noticed the basement door. It was closed. I know it was open when I left because once we got my dad back upstairs and we all agreed to go to the hospital, we left soon after and no one went back towards the basement. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened the door. Just as quickly as I opened it, Joey pushed it shut. Joey, why did you do that? I wanted to see something. There's nothing to see. You got your phone. Can we please leave? I looked at him for a brief moment and reached for the handle. I opened the door and saw the basement light was still on. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes for a split second, and made my way down. I don't know what I was looking for, but I was compelled to go down there. I heard Joey follow me behind me down the stairs. I peered around the corner and saw nothing. Monopoly money still strewn across the floor, but nothing out of the ordinary. I hit the switch with the light still shining from the top of the stairs. See, nothing to worry about, I said as I turned around, proudly smiling, having conquered my fear. That's when I looked up and saw Joey standing by the door. He never came down. Whose footsteps? The door slammed shut and the lights went out. That's when I heard it, the breathing. I blindly ran up the stairs, hands stretched out in front of me, reaching for that door handle. I grabbed it and pushed it, but couldn't get through. Joey, let me out. Open the door. Open the fucking door. I heard footsteps sprint up the stairs, and I felt someone wrap their hands around my leg. The door flew open, and I slammed it behind me. I heard clawing at the basement door and leaned with all my weight against it. I looked over to my right and saw Joey cowering in the corner with tears pouring down. Joey, were you holding the door? Through his screaming cries, he said, No, I told you something was down there. I grabbed Joey and we ran out of the house. When we got back to the hospital, I brought Joey to my sister and immediately called the police. They came by to investigate the empty house and found nothing in the basement. It wasn't until they came back up the stairs that they saw the claw marks on the door. Whoever, whatever was down there can stay. I'm not. That was my last night in that house. I don't think I'll ever go back. We hope you enjoyed those two stories. Like I said, Tiff was supposed to read the second one, and we were gonna do a third one, but after me reading that second one, there's no way. I'm sorry about the mess ups through part of those stories. I tried my hardest, y'all. It didn't work out. But the second story kind of hits close to home for us because at Tiff's mom's house, we used to do the same thing. Like, we would be in the basement for hours and hours on end, and then when the nighttime would hit and we had to come back upstairs, we would literally turn off the light and then speed our way up the stairs.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
We couldn't help it, though. Like, we were hearing footsteps running behind us. Oh, yeah, one thing about that basement was that it was haunted, so yeah, it's great. But we would race up the stairs, slam the door shut, and run into her room.
Yes.
And sometimes we would even hear footsteps coming down that hallway, which is weird. But anyways, so if you find us on YouTube, please subscribe. Please. And if you find us on Spotify or any of the other podcast places, please give us a follow, rate us maybe, and we hope you enjoy this, and hope to see you next time.